The Unchanging Exploitation by the West, a lesson from history. The West has always exploited those it tames. This has been the case for centuries, and it shows no signs of changing. Those who fall under the West's spell, enamored by its promises, are inevitably sent to fight its wars. The history of our world is filled with examples of this tragic pattern, where nations that once sought friendship or alliance with the West found themselves betrayed and used as mere tools for Western ambitions. Consider the tale from the novel Tambora by the Indonesian writer Sun Thani. In this story, a young Indonesian boy named Tambora is captivated by the Dutch colonizers. Dreaming of honor and recognition, he arrives at a European fort, hoping to don a military uniform and be embraced as an equal. But instead of the respect he yearns for, Tambora is sent to the stables to sharpen an officer's sword. As he toils for the Dutch, his family back home falls apart. His father, once a respected village leader, becomes a broken man, and his mother succumbs to illness and dies. Tambora himself is treated with contempt, subjected to menial tasks and abuse. And as expected, the sword he sharpens and Tambora himself are eventually used in one of the Dutch's brutal wars on the Spice Islands. Sun Thani's metaphor is painfully accurate. This is exactly how the West treats those who fall under its influence. History is littered with similar stories. Once, the Iroquois leaders approached the English settlers in North America with genuine expressions of love and friendship. The English, in turn, assured them of mutual respect. 4 Iroquois chiefs were even sent to London, where Queen Anne received them with great honours. She showered them with gifts: a razor, scissors, comb, shirt, hat, a block of lead, and a small portrait of herself, along with a beautiful copper kettle. But the Iroquois Confederacy, having allied itself with the English, soon found itself at the forefront of the wars against the French for dominance in North America. When the French were defeated, the Anglo-Saxons no longer needed their allies. The Iroquois, now exhausted and diminished, were unceremoniously expelled from the very lands they had helped the English conquer. A similar betrayal unfolded during the Caucasian War with the Circassians. In England, the Circassians became incredibly popular. Crowds gathered to catch a glimpse of Circassian delegates in London, and newspapers sang praises of their imposing posture, romantic attire, dark solemn eyes, and natural dignity. The British press countered Russian claims that the Circassians were savages and bandits, instead portraying them as brave and heroic people. But when the war ended, and the Circassians were defeated, they were forced to resettle in Turkey under an agreement with the Ottoman Empire. This mass resettlement, known as muhajirism, was a devastating tragedy for the Circassian people. Meanwhile, the English, who had once praised and courted the Circassians, showed little concern for their fate. Instead, English diplomats were pleased that these Highlanders could now be used against Russia from Turkish territory. To the British, the Circassians were just another version of the charming Iroquois, useful only so long as they served Western interests. But the English had been perfecting this pattern long before the Caucasian War. 100 years earlier, in Bengal, the English found a willing ally in Mir Jafar, a relative of the Bengal Nawab and one of his commanders. In a decisive battle, Mir Jafar betrayed the Nawab, switched sides, and handed Bengal over to the East India Company. At that time, Bengal was the wealthiest state in India, home to around 25 million people. But under English control, Bengal's fortunes rapidly declined. The English looted the treasury, monopolized foreign trade, crushed key domestic industries, and imposed crippling taxes. The resulting economic collapse led to the ruin of artisans, farmers, and landowners, and triggered the first Great Famine in Bengal, a disaster that claimed the lives of about a third of its population. And as if this betrayal wasn't enough, the very Bengali warriors who had been subjugated by the English were then sent off to fight in wars against the still independent Marathas. These stories can be repeated endlessly different settings, different characters, but the same tragic play. Perhaps the West would like to change its repertoire, but it seems incapable of forming equal relationships with other cultures. Deep-seated cultural racism creates a divide that cannot be bridged. The West cannot truly accept outsiders as equals or invite them to share in its wealth and power. Instead, those who fall under its influence, whether they are Indonesian, African, or Ukrainian, are used often in the backyard or on the battlefield. The more someone loves the West, the more they are played. The examples are all around us. Our own history offers a stark reminder of this pattern. When Boris Yeltsin addressed the U.S. Congress in 1992 with his famous God Bless America speech, he was surrounded by admiring American lawmakers. They patted him on the shoulder, thanked him warmly, and made him feel welcome. Yeltsin believed that America was embracing him as an equal, but he was gravely mistaken. The congressmen were not welcoming a partner, but another charming Iroquois. At that time, we made mistakes that continue to haunt us. Like the young Tambara from Sunthani's novel, we abandoned our own destiny and handed the keys to our future over to the West. This decision has led to bloody conflicts across the post-Soviet world, wars that could have been avoided had we understood the true nature of our relationship with the West. This dynamic has always existed and will continue to exist. Those who fall in love with the West are inevitably sent to fight its wars. We have never had, and never will have, equal, peaceful, neighborly, and mutually beneficial relations with this civilization. Tambara can only ever be integrated into the stables, not invited to the feast. It is high time we seriously consider how to pass this understanding on to future generations. Unfortunately, the current state of education and culture offers little assurance that we won't one day see another leader with a radiant smile, ready to trade away the hard-won independence of our people for pats on the back in Western capitals, a portrait and a kettle. Much needs to change for our country, it is a matter of survival. Perhaps it's time to include the novel by the great Indonesian writer, who is, incidentally, buried in Moscow's Maitano Cemetery, in the 6th grade curriculum. Let it be studied alongside Robinson Crusoe not as a mere alternative, but as a necessary counterpoint. For the lessons of history must be learned early and remembered well if we are to avoid the pitfalls that have ensnared so many before us.